And we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this meetup. Great. I do see the first people coming in. We'll give this a few more minutes to allow people to join. If you already joined, then feel free to just say hi in the chat. If you do so, make sure to select to everyone before saying hi. Maybe include your location so that we can see from where the audience today is. Nice, still silence in the chat. First one. Hi, Victory from Nigeria, currently living in Berlin. Nice. John is from England. Hi, welcome. Washington.
Welcome everyone. I'm excited to get your questions during the presentation.
Absolutely. That's why I asked you to figure out where the chat is, so so that you know where to place the questions later on, either there or in the Q&A section. Both fine. I'll monitor both. So we have UK. Yeah, Carlos, make sure to welcome. Make sure to select to everyone before writing into the chat. Hey, Paolo, same for you. Nice. So I still give this a few moments to allow people to join. Maybe a few housekeeping rules before we get started. So this meetup is being recorded, as you can see, and we will share the recording with you tomorrow together with an email. And Alan also said yes to sharing his slides. So I'll share the presentation in the PDF tomorrow, so that you don't have to write stuff down while listening to Alan. I think that's great. So if you have questions, as I already said, feel free to either drop them in the chat that most of you already found, or maybe even better, put them in the Q&A section, because there they don't get lost and we can make sure to answer them. And this is really about also about your questions. So I think with Alan, we have somebody that has a lot of experience in building internal developer platforms. So he's very happy to also answer your questions. So keep them coming during the presentation. And I would say we can slowly get started. So welcome again, everybody. Good evening or good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. I do see very different time zones here. It's great to have you all in this meetup. I'm Christoph. I'm co-founder and chief operating officer of Humanitech. And we are hosting this series of meetups. But this is not about me or Humanitech, but about our guests. And today we have Alan with us, dev.lab. I tried to enter that in the browser, but it didn't work. But Alan, why don't you introduce yourself with this very interesting topic of your internal developer platform is not great.
Yeah, it's subpar, I guess you could say. Okay. Really excited to meet all of you. You know, Humanitech, they're a really great group. If you're not using them, definitely feel free to check them out. They're really wonderful people, and they have great content that will help you if you're going on a platform journey. Spoiler for the presentation, what I'm going to be covering is why you shouldn't be building a platform. I hope that's not going to shock you if you're here. And I'm not going to be cursing or anything, but I really want to share with you the story that we went on with building an internal platform, and the challenges, the costs, and what we end up, having to do to, in the long run, maintain it and run it and all those things. So it's going to be really wonderful. I hope you have a great time. Please use the Q&A. I'll do my best to answer interactively, but I can kind of tend to ramble, so I might go on and on. So Christoph, you might have to just stop me or something.
No problem. No problem. Happy to do that, Alan.
Great. And just let me know when I'm good to go, and I'd be glad to get.
I think you could. Yeah, I think you're good to go.
Okay, good. So this is a great question that I'll get into in the talk here. So there's a lot of terms that are being thrown around right now with internal developer platforms, control planes, and I think my frame of reference is going to be like, how is it going to be used? How is it going to be installed? How much level of control and access are you giving? The developer control planes that I see basically are something you can install into Kubernetes or whatever your platform is, and then it's kind of like a visual that you can see and control, but it's not like, there's not a lot of opinions. So I think the difference in my perspective is the amount of opinions. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into my talk here. The product we built is called dev.lab. The dot is silent. Some people call it dev.labs. I'm not sure why. Maybe that's like math and mathematics. I don't know. People just started doing that. Who knows? So who do I work for? Where do we build this thing? We're called Veterans United Home Loans. We're a company in the United States that does mortgages for veterans of the armed forces. The benefit we offer is in this time that we're in, people want to spread out a little bit, right? And they're looking to find a place to live. And what we offer is a really great experience to use your veterans benefit to put zero down on a home in the United States and get started with us through the mortgage process, which is stressful and frustrating and challenging, especially if you get orders to suddenly move someplace across the country. So that's what we're here to do. We have another brand called Patio. It does conventional mortgages, and that's kind of young and hip and all that kind of fun stuff. But I'm not that hip or young anymore. So who am I? So why am I telling you this story today about platforms and all these things? Well, I wrote a spicy blog and I kind of said, don't build a platform, go use Humanic instead or anything else. You don't want to build this. And then I'm on this website about internal developer platforms. I built one. So obviously I'm a worldwide expert at this point. And I've been on this podcast with Victor Farsick and Darren Pope, DevOps Paradox. I really recommend you listen to it, or at least check out Victor Farsick on YouTube. He has really great videos that explain the Kubernetes tools. There's so many out there that I wouldn't have time to even explore them, and he does that. So it's really awesome. So I know my stuff, and I'm going to share with you what we learned. And what you're going to learn from this presentation is building the product from 0 to 1, that is an internal platform, and then growing that product, because that is a challenge. Is once it's built, great, but growing the usage is the main challenge. It's not so much building. So you're going to learn some expensive firsthand lessons that I learned and my team learned while building this product. So you might be asking yourself, what is a platform? For example, Srikanth asked that in the chat. Essentially, what's the difference between these platforms? What is a platform? Evan Botcher here in this article has a really succinct description of a platform, and it's a collection of these tools that your developers are using to complete their jobs. Those are APIs, they're tools, services, knowledge, documentation, the support of the platform, people telling the developers how to use it. Those are all part of what a platform is. Though he warns there's 3 components of an internal developer platform to make it successful. And those 3 components come down to a product team. So that's the long-lived team that's going to be building and maintaining the platform until it's sunset, until it rides into the sunset. And then once it's built, the application teams that are using the platform, they're going to have to adapt. They're going to have to change and understand that some of the things that they had control of are going to move over to the platform team that's centralized. They're going to lose some access. They're going to have to make feature requests if they want to change those things. And then there's going to be that balance between deciding when do we put this in the platform? When does it stay in the hands of the autonomous individuals that are delivering business value? Those are really hard things that you need to deal with as you're going on this journey. So what is Kubernetes? I keep referencing Kubernetes. Maybe none of you here know what Kubernetes is. Who knows? It's possible. I've met many people on this journey at different levels, and there's a lot of execs that really don't understand how is this different. And so if you haven't seen it already, check out the Children's Illustrated Guide to Kubernetes. It's a fantastic, very visual experience to understand what does Kubernetes do? What does it offer as a platform? The definition you can see here, there's a lot of words there. Essentially what it's doing that our virtual machines didn't do before is making sure that we can do things in a very repeatable way, and that when the things are not working, it has mechanisms to fix it. That's how I would kind of summarize it very quickly. Obviously, it's glossing over a lot of the importance and fancy technologies it's using, right? So I like to reference this Twitter quote from Kelsey Hightower. He's one of these like original people in the space that gives the viewpoint of like, where is it going? Like, why should you do it? Do it the hard way, that kind of stuff. And I love this quote he offers about building platform tools. If he was going to look back again and do it for a company, he wouldn't even choose Kubernetes, because what he's looking for is if you wrap a few virtual machines together and you sprinkle on a little bit of application development and then configuration management, and boom, you have a platform. So the point I want you to take away from this is Kubernetes is not the point of an internal developer platform. It's really great. Lots of people are excited about it right now. That's wonderful. However, the platform you're seeking to build is there to offer the ability of your developers to be empowered and to accomplish their jobs and not to be distracted by all the infrastructure and things that they need to do. So if you can do it in a way simpler method than running Kubernetes yourself, then do so. However, there's some really great benefits to the tool. So who do we support? Like, what was the journey like when we're building this thing? Who are we trying to serve? Well, to tell you about our stack, most of us are .NET developers, about 130, give or take. Then we have some Python and PHP, so in marketing, quantitative strategy. What the platform offers is all these workloads can run on top of it. We're not really concerned about one stack versus the other. If we can containerize you and you can use the Helm charts that we're defining, then you're going to be solid. We're going to take care of that for you. And this platform is basically built and run by about 6 or 7 people. We have a QA, we have typical application development engineers to provide a good experience. And then we have the more typical Kubernetes administration. These are a couple individuals that they're keeping an eye on the systems, making sure that they're steady, they're up, they're resilient, all those great things. And the rest of these people are supported and they're able to get their work done. They're not having to learn Kubernetes internals, all those different things. So what was the problem with our legacy environment? Well, we're calling it Stable Lab. Obviously, now people are like, oh, is the new one unstable? They always ask those questions, right? And naming's hard, right? So here's the challenge with that. If we wanted to go from a new idea to experimenting with it, there was so much time that we're wasting going to different third parties, waiting for tickets to be resolved. They have all their different priorities and backlogs and times, and it was a mess. It was simply a mess. Now we've removed a significant amount of that portion. You decide you're going to make an app, 10 minutes later, it's all spun up. You can add your monitoring and alerting when you're ready to do that, and you're good to go as a developer. You're not waiting as much. You can be autonomous. You can be able to add the value, to think through your ideas, help the business as much as possible. So that's what we're aiming for. So the value that this is offering for our internal developers at the moment is streamlined consistency, less to maintain, less waiting, not so much support and debug time. You have a dedicated centralized team that's there to help you if you run into any roadblocks or issues. You focus on your product you're building, not on the internals, the infrastructure, just the undifferentiated heavy lifting. And then we can make changes at the platform level that affect everyone. We're not waiting on, oh, well, we're going to have to negotiate this security change across 37 different backlogs. Like, when are we going to get this change through? That doesn't happen with this new system. With the old system, it still does. And that's really tough. And moving into this new cloud native world, that's what we're trying to go is we can't expect every single team to be masters of security, masters of databases, masters of everything. We need to make it easier for people to do their jobs. So the hope is Kubernetes is this universal cloud platform. If you want to run your workloads over here, and then all of a sudden you change your mind, you're going to move over there. Obviously, it's not that simple. You need, great people to help you do these things, but that's the hope, that this is just this one common interface that you can run your code on. So what was the early product vision with this product, dev.lab? Well, white glove, hospitality focused. An experience where you're not concerned with all the details. We've removed them for you. You simply build and you run your app and it's there. It's already going to development with very little thought. You can simply get to doing your work, not all the other stuff. But we had some problems. It wasn't easy from the start. There were a lot of issues, actually. We don't often build a product from scratch. It's much more common that we're adding feature. Oh, I got another feature request, add another feature request. Let's get that in there. Oh, great, awesome. But starting from scratch, a totally new concept, what do we do? The vision at the beginning, it wasn't super clear. We all had different directions we thought we were going. It started to drift over time. we'd ask ourselves, are we building a container as a service platform? Or are we building the platform as a service? Or what are we building here? And then sometimes we'd come up with a big document like, this is what it's going to do. And in year 3, it's going to do this. And oh, it's going to be amazing. Like that might be a little too far out these days. Planning more than 6 months seems a little sketchy. I don't know about you. And then just all these cultural changes were happening at the same time. Like you can build the tool. However, if you're not changing to use the tool, if your organization's not aware of that, well, maybe we need to interact differently. Maybe we need to communicate differently. Maybe the coordination we're doing is not really going to sustain itself. You're going to go through a lot of these changes trying to use the tool, and you may not be aware that you're going through those things.
I think Jeff has a very fair question, which is Azure DevOps or GitHub a part of an internal developer platform, or is an IDP compete with these tools?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that it can be part of it. And I'll get more into that in this story. For our case, what we chose to do is we integrated a lot of tools, and there's tools similar to that take that place. However, there's like pros and cons to each tool, and they have a very specific frame of what the world looks like. So internally we have Azure DevOps, and it wasn't a good fit for what we wanted to do. So we've moved away from it in this platform. And I'll kind of get into that a little bit more. So I hope that answers your question, but it can be, I'll probably cover it a little bit better than I can right now without spoiling the whole thing. But great question. Thank you, Jeff. So this is the timeline of the whole platform project. One of the things I like to call out, because it's not super clear to a lot of people, is that executive support is really key to a big initiative like this. When I pitched the project very early on, I gave the time frame of 18 to 24 months, and that seems to be like a very common industry change timeline for people to get used to a thing and changing their work processes and all that stuff. So despite how fast we could have built it, I think this is very reasonable for a very large organization dealing with a lot of people. However, maybe you'll beat me and you will do it in 6 months, who knows? But I recommend that you definitely get executive support. What we had before July of 2020 is that at the beginning of the year, I had a boss that really rallied the troops, the executives, to pare down the 100 different projects that we could have done to 3. And this is one of the 3. And then once we got that alignment, we pitched the research. And then once we got the research complete and we showed to them the value, we had a very, very rough prototype. Then they let us go through developing the proof of concept and the minimum viable product, which I really don't recommend using MVP at all, unless you're really clear what it means for everybody, because platforms are not very minimal. They're very thick platforms. They have to do a lot of stuff. You're looking to replicate what you already have that works, and it takes a lot of work to get there. So in November, we delivered the MVP, and then from January on, we were focused on getting people to use it. So we had different phases, which was alpha and beta, and there were moments of time where the product was less stable. It wasn't terrible, but people were definitely very hesitant to start using it because they're used to a very rock solid experience. So that was a big challenge. And then in May, we made it generally available. So what that meant was any new projects that were determined to come up, we wanted it to be a first for the platform and not on the older system that we had. And the reason why we wanted to compress the schedule, so we could have delivered the general available marker in the 1 year of the project. We chose to do it at 10 months in so that we compressed the schedule by 2 months. And that was taken very favorably by our executives because it showed that we were really serious about trying to deliver value sooner. So looking back, I really wish we could have gotten someone on the platform from nearly the beginning. If you can do that, that's going to be really valuable for you so you can validate your ideas. Unfortunately, we just didn't have that luxury. So these are some different stakeholders at the time that we're working with during this timeline of getting it built out and talking through how are we going to roll this out. You know, half the time is spent building the platform, and then the other half of the time is going to be about communicating about it to different levels, making sure that they're feeling heard, that some people are going to be really vocal, and you may not actually take that feedback and bake it into your product, because ultimately how people use the product should drive its development. And you might have people that are really passionate, like, I really want to use Kubernetes. I can learn all the YAML. And in some cases that's true. In some cases it's not. So software engineers, they have really specific needs. They want it to go fast. They want to iterate quickly. But our executives, they're really looking to solve business problems. They want to make sure that the value is being delivered. The software architects, they want to make sure that we're making the right choices and that we can change it over time. Our technical trainers, they're really concerned with how to communicate. Why are we even doing this? How are they going to learn how to use it? I spent a lot of time building tutorials, but it didn't hit the mark when it came to why are we changing and how is this different from the older platform? And then product owners, these are people that are working on their own business apps. They're open to trying your product or your platform. They just want to make sure that they can hit their deadlines. So as long as you're able to communicate to them that they can still hit their deadlines, they'd be willing to work with you. However, if they have to communicate to people that timelines are slipping, then it's really tough for them to want to use your product. So this is the biggest constraint that I had with this project from the beginning. No cloud. Can you believe it? 2022 and someone's telling you no cloud. But that's what our CIO at the time requested us to focus on. We're only on premises. We're this traditional mortgage company shop. Who's using the cloud anyways? Let's keep it all in-house. We don't want to be in the newspaper if our borrower's data is compromised. Well, this is the guidelines we were given and we rose to the challenge. And in some ways it made it simpler for us to achieve what we're doing because it really constrained the options with what we could choose. We also chose not to host any databases on Kubernetes. This seems to be an area that's really changing right now, but we just haven't pursued it because we have virtual machines that are off Kubernetes that are doing the job that another group of people love doing that. So we're going to let them do that until the time comes that we have to do it. So no cloud. Can you believe it? Wow. This is the cloud native landscape. I can tell you're overwhelmed. What am I looking at? What are all these boxes? Oh my gosh, this is overwhelming. And we were faced with the same feeling when we were building this platform. What do we even choose? Do we spend 2 weeks pre-vetting every single thing of this map? Okay, so no cloud. So, okay, half the things are off this map now. Well, then what do we go with? It's really daunting. Like, where do you even start with all this stuff? Just give me the recipe. Like, I just want to be successful here, right? So what it ends up looking like is this. You're on this trail map. And on the trail map, you're just selecting all the different things that you need. You need little containers, you need CI/CD, you need some observability, so on and so forth. Once you settle on some specific technologies people are using, you can kind of move on with your time. As long as you feel satisfied, it's hitting the needs, it's accomplishing the goal, and you can move higher in where the value is for building the platform. This is all the stuff to run it, but ultimately it's not usually going to make a huge difference unless you have a really specific business problem, right? So I definitely recommend checking this out if you're going to go on the journey, like make it a little bit easier for yourself. There's some proven technologies, and some of these are a lot harder to build and run and maintain than others. So dev.lab, it's white glove. It's a long journey though. We've built the platform, people are starting to use it. However, we're not going to see the massive adoption and value for maybe a year or two more since we built this thing. It's a long journey. It takes a lot of time for people to really move over and leverage it. So these are some of the tools that we've selected. As you can see here, I kind of referenced it earlier that we've moved away from Azure DevOps. We're embracing GitLab at the moment, but we do want the flexibility to move away. That's our source control. We use Helm. We have one Helm chart for all our .NET stuff. We have Rancher internally that's running Kubernetes and making it easy for us to have our administrators go in and fix things, keep an eye on things. StackRox monitors the security. We have Linkerd as our service mesh. We have Harbor as a proxy cache because Docker Hub goes down sometimes and we prefer not to be blocked. We have Octeto as our rapid inner loop development toolkit. So the pipeline's about 10 minutes from the creation to getting to development, or if you make a change, it's going to go through that pipeline. That's a little too slow for people to want to see the changes. And Octeto, along with many other tools, telepresence and others, are great tools to circumvent that process and just keep working as a developer very iteratively, get your feedback very quickly. Really recommend that. And then we have logs and API design and cloud events, all these different things combined together to make a great product. So your internal developer platform can be really anything. And my focus is on really strict opinions because we want to make our junior developers really successful and be able to know how to make the right choices, very simply fall into the pit of success. That's the purpose of a white glove platform. The developer control plane, it's maybe more for someone with refined tastes and has quite a bit of experience with working with the innards and able to choose things very well. So you have to decide based on your audience who you're targeting. So you might be asking yourself, okay, what about all those other, front ends and tools you can use? I think they're really great. Backstage, Clutch, massive communities behind Backstage, especially really flexible. For us, it wasn't a good fit. There's a bit of a cloud focus there, and it's not opinionated enough for what I'm looking to do with it. So we built our own front end portal, but at any time we could decide to move away from that and just simply offer Backstage to internal teams. So if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's a really great tool. There's a big, massive community that's powering it. Comes from Spotify. However, just make sure you're being aware of who you're serving and how they're going to use it. Not every team is going to be super technical or familiar with doing different things. So just be aware, pick your choices very closely. Marketing, as you can see, I'm wearing this lovely hat. The product didn't really feel real until we named it, until we sent out hats. For a while, it was just sort of like, what's this thing are they doing? Like, is it going to happen? Like, maybe this is not going to happen. Like, do we even need to bother? Once we sent hats out, it really changed the conversation and we named it. It went a lot easier. It was less theoretical. So I really recommend you do some marketing for whatever you end up building. If you do build something, even if you take a managed product and you just add something, some flavor on top of it, name that so people can talk about it. I usually just recommend something short so we can say it. Otherwise, it's really annoying to talk about. So the hospitality focused user experience, what is that like? What is the point of it? And really the point is reducing cognitive load. Software engineers today, they have so much choice at their disposal for careers, and they also have choice for tools. And sometimes when you're working in a big company, there's too many tools. You have to use all the tools, all the places, and it's really hard to keep all that in memory at the same time. You might be swapping from different projects. The more that we can keep our systems consistent, the more we can move people around, the more that we can better teach and educate each other about how to be successful using our tools. And so in our very opinionated internal developer platform, what we've decided to do is standardize as much as possible. So standardized pull requests via GitLab's functionality, easy to read Git history using conventional commits. You have to prefix your commit. So when people look through the source code, they know, okay, this was a feature, or this is a fix, or this is a chore, versus, I don't know if you've seen commits out there, but sometimes they're just like, change the thing, it's still broken. Like, it's not very helpful if I'm working with you if you write like that. And then we also add a lot of secure defaults at the platform level, the centralization. We can say, these all need to make sure to run as non-root, and boom, it's all done. We don't have to depend on the 37 teams understanding why they're potentially making risky choices in their software development. Ultimately, reducing choice, reducing cognitive load will help them be more successful. During this journey, though, not everyone feels super comfortable with all that reduction of choice, and you might have to deal with that. And I'll touch on that a little bit more in a moment. So the problem we set out to solve is we need aligned autonomous teams. We can't have them coordinating with each other all the time, talking about what's your API contract. We want them to experiment, try out ideas, and understand that if this is not going to work, you can abandon ship. It's okay. And then just simply focus. Focus on doing the work that you're here to do and not be distracted by all the cool new tools that are coming out constantly. So the benefits of this centralized portal: one place to just go find the things that you need. You can experiment quickly. You're not being blocked by other people. You can help improve the platform. You can do inner sourcing. It's very similar to open source, except that it's in your business. I wouldn't call this super successful as an initiative for us, but the benefit has been that many teams want to add features, or they're really passionate about one particular feature that they leverage, they use. The example in our case is blue-green deployments. There's one team that they really need to have blue-green deployments. If they don't have it, then it's a non-starter for them. And we talk with them for quite a long time. And the benefit of offering this is that, this is not a, enterprise level feature we need to add for every team. If you think of the Pareto principle, the 20% will help the 80%. It's not part of that 20%. And so what we can do is we can encourage the teams that are really passionate about a feature, like, well, come join us for 3 days and you can work with the team. You can get a feature request implemented. Once you know how to work with the team, just send us a pull request. This is not like your older systems. If you work in a Microsoft land of IaaS, like, oh, let's send a pull request for IaaS. That's not going to happen. You'll never have that happen. But in our case, you can actually participate. You can be part of us. You can be one of the people improving the platform. Not a lot of people have taken us up on that yet, but I'm very hopeful. I'm really hopeful that's going to change, and a lot of people are going to want to help. So what does it look like at scale? I talked to some engineering leaders at Netflix and Apple. I don't know if you've heard of Apple. It's just like a mom and pop shop down the corner, I guess. They do something with computers. So at their scale, they have a lot different problems. And I was expecting like, well, there must be something I'm going to miss at some point. Like what does it look like when your platform gets really big with lots of people and they're all trying to use it? And they have the same kind of problems that we have today, which is I can't find the documentation. I can't find the right package to use. Is this the approved package? Is this being maintained? Is this API about to be sunset? Is it a new API? And then who do I go to talk about these resources? Who owns them? So those are all the same problems that I have today that they have today too. So what they solved was day one development speed. We got it. You can go fast, right? You can go so fast. The problem was they went too fast and they caused two new problems. The two problems is sprawl. So they have all these lightly used apps spread all over the place. Is this still being used? Now we got to go inventory it. Ugh. And then we couldn't upgrade you in place. If you're on one major language version and then you want to go to the next, well, that's your team's problem. That's not the platform's problem. Yeah, we don't want that. That seems like a big miss for platforms. So that's something that we are really trying to solve with our internal developer platform, dev.lab, which is we want to control that Docker file. We don't want you to be touching it as much as possible. You might have to. We really don't advise it. But as much as possible, we want to own that so that if we can upgrade you, we will. Otherwise, it's just more work for other people to do. We don't want that. And then they built a Yelp-like marketplace for resources, documentation, for all the things. So you can vote, and then based on how many clicks it gets, it ranks it higher. It's a scale of problem I haven't seen yet. So I'm looking forward to that in the future if we get so big that we have that problem. But creating stuff, it's so fun, but then it's really hard to communicate to people what's actually in use and not. So lessons learned. I'm going to take a little swig of water so I can read this off here. So 12-factor, if you go to 12factor.net, it is a wonderful resource to communicate to development teams why cloud native is different. And the challenge that we had at the beginning was without this, luckily I had a great trainer that developed curriculum for our engineers that could communicate the why behind the platform. And the challenge before that was they were applying the old mental models from the virtual machine, IaaS, Jenkins pipeline kind of environment. And they were trying to apply that to this new system. So they're like, so how do I reboot the web server? Like, well, you don't reboot the web server. Well, where do I put my shell script in the pipeline? Well, we have one pipeline for everybody, just one pipeline. In Azure DevOps, we have like 800 pipelines for a build and release, and they all do the same thing. But why is there 800 of them, right? So what we had to end up doing is he came up with some custom curriculum and a workshop so that they could educate each other about, where does this apply or not apply with the old apps that we built, and how is it different with the new apps? And that was really transformative to explain and show why it's different. You build the platform, you build the tool, it's just the start of a journey. The technology is moving fast. You can work with consultants, but it's really new. It's really changing. I heard stories like a team in 2017, a security team went to go learn about Kubernetes. And then the next day, half of the content was outdated. But luckily, it's much more boring now than ever before. Much more of it is stable. It's here to stay. However, I don't believe that the knowledge is as widespread as we'd love it to be. And I've definitely seen a lot of teams try to support everybody. it's not going to work. You can't make everybody happy in your organization. There's only going to be so many stakeholders that you can satisfy with your platform. And there's going to be the unique differentiation you're not going to be able to support. It's just too different. There's virtual machines, there's other options, cloud, point them to those things, but you can't take on too much. Too easy to try and do that. I still struggle with explaining the technical concepts to senior leaders. If you all have tips on how to do that, let me know. But that's going to be a big challenge, is just explaining, why are we doing this? How is it different, and why is it going to help your business? If you build a big product like this, vision is key. Create a big vision so that you can all align around solving the shared problem. Otherwise, what you run into is you might get this transactional, well, I'll do this for the developers and you do that for the business. And you don't want that. We're all here on the same team trying to achieve the same goal. The bigger vision you can create, it'll include everyone. They'll understand their role and they'll want to participate. People have a hard time giving up control of things. Talk with them, listen, just keep listening. You may not have to do a lot with that information, but just keep listening, understand where they're coming from, that they're just trying to navigate the changes. We went with the Vault sidecar. This is how we load secrets in. So it'll refresh every 5 minutes. It's a bit greedy. We had this one situation at the beginning of the platform journey. We had one team that's very experimental. They love to try new things. And we got them on there. And then they contacted us and they said, hey, this pod doesn't have secrets. It's not working. It hasn't been working for a few days. And we were like, oh, it hasn't been working for a few days. So we start looking into it. We're digging in and we're like, uh-oh, we didn't have enough injectors set. So what happened is these pods are constantly coming up and down of containers. When it came up, there weren't enough injectors to load the secrets in. So it didn't come up with those secrets. And that was really frustrating for them because they were expecting a very stable experience. And luckily, we fixed it as soon as we could, and we communicated to them and their teams. And we had a nice meeting afterwards saying, what do we need to do different? Like, we've already fixed it. It's already not a problem. And they're already thinking, how do we do health checks and automation to make sure it never happens again, right? And luckily, that was very tiny window of a problem that we were able to fix. And we haven't had big issues like that, except for one I'll tell you in a little bit. And so that's something you have to watch out for. This is a kind of product that the expectation is that it's going to be super stable. So when there's a problem, you're like, you got to jump on it. And I've used a lot of metrics and signals from GitLab to understand, like, where's the adoption going? Like, I'm constantly looking, okay, how many apps are getting to production? You know, where are the people using lots of merge requests? For us, merge requests signifies like a lot of teamwork, a lot of coordination in a team, in collaboration. Some security lessons learned, bake as much into the pipeline. This space is really great. It's really changing, and they're really focused on like software bill of materials, where a few years ago that was sort of like, when are we going to get to this? Now it's like, we got to do this. So it's a really exciting time. Try to make sure you're not running as root in your containers and whatnot. There's a lot of great tools to scan. We're really trying to make sure that we're mindful of the technical coupling of all these different systems and being able to swap it out. So at any time, you know, we're a long-lived business. We're going to be around for a while. We might not always use some of these tools and technologies. So we want to make sure that the portal is just linking out to them so that the developers can use them, and we're not going to try and hide them. But for the most part, expect that, you know, change might happen. You might have to swap these things out. If you tie yourself to one, then it might be something really expensive for you to change later. Training, really, I can't emphasize enough how important training was. I wrote a lot of tutorials. They didn't really explain why to use it, and the trainer really made it understandable and easy to know, why are we doing this? And I think that's just a really great benefit. Communication is really key. Half the work is building the platform. The other half is communicating to all these different stakeholders that you have, your executives, the teams. People are not going to get it at one time in one communication. This is like months and months of communication. This is emails, which many people don't read. This is videos, which many people may not watch. This is blogs that I wrote a few blogs at the beginning that really missed the mark. And the reason was I wasn't even sure what we were building and how we were going to make people use it. So a lot of people were just simply unclear, where is their role in the change? And I think that's something to work on and improve, and make sure that people are clear of how they're going to be using your platform. We have a dedicated Slack channel for support. A lot of the questions that we get, we try to funnel to a private Stack Overflow instance The reason is that that flow of text with Slack is really hard for anybody to look through, and they're not going to search in Slack usually for the question. They may not even have the words to ask the question. So that's a challenge. We have a dedicated documentation site for the tutorials and videos and all the things. It's been working pretty well, but it's just a constant maintenance effort. And you really need to focus on the value your users are going to be trying to use that for. And that's a big challenge. Testimonials, I really recommend just asking for testimonials as much as possible. People want to know that they're being successful or that their peers are successful. And you can use this as a way to make people feel like trustworthy. Like the fear in this space is that people are going to be forced to use a tool they don't want to use. That's the big fear people have. And so you can get ahead of that. So we have 46 applications in production, 14 teams onboarded. That's changing constantly. Obviously, this number isn't like huge and groundbreaking, but for us, this is pretty significant amount of business value that we're delivering. So we have a great question in the chat here by Julian B. And it's, do you have one big cluster with project apps separated by namespaces? So we have a namespace per project, or we're calling them apps now. We don't have a higher level concept, but there's so much flexibility in this space that I couldn't tell you that one way is wrong or not. But that's just how we've decided it to try and keep the name consistent across the different tools. And we only have, we have clusters in different data centers, but for the most part, we have them segmented off based on a kind of a multi-tenant namespace that Rancher kind of came up with before the Kubernetes, official multi-tenancy became a thing. So one last story I want to share with you all. I've definitely spoken to you for such a long time, and you all are trying to eat your food, and but one story I want to share with you is we had an issue with our service mesh one day. And, as you're building your platform, you're probably thinking, okay, this needs to be, disaster resilient. And how are you going to handle those things? And maybe you're very optimistic like me, and you're like, well, there's never going to be a problem. So why would we test the backups, or why would we, test anything, right? Or hopefully you have a testing background like me, and you're thinking we should definitely test the backups, and we should definitely test failover, right? So we've definitely put in a lot of effort to test everything, to make sure that it's being set up properly, that we know about the issues. And one day we had a meeting with Linkerd in the afternoon, and we're like, oh, I'm so excited. We're going to talk to Linkerd. That's going to be great. And we started seeing some errors in our clusters. And it's like, that was weird. The previous Friday, there was some issue with our service mesh in dev, and oh, well, it's just dev. I mean, we'll just fix it. It's not a big deal. And all of a sudden in production, things were just not working, and we're seeing all these logs about it's not communicating. We use Linkerd for mutual TLS so they can talk securely. It's not all public, for people to just hear the traffic and what's being transmitted. And so we're questioning, and then people are asking, they're oh, we need to make a call here. We need to fail over to the other data center. Luckily, we had all the apps the same way that we had deployed them with containers and everything, so that we could fail over from our load balancer to the different data center. And so things are working fine again. So it's going good. Things are going great. Okay, great. Uh-oh. Well, now there's latency because our data center is in a different geographic region. It's 500 miles away, or I'm probably getting that wrong, but it's much further away. And so all of our different apps are getting these backoffs. And then some apps didn't have really good database transactions, so that those are getting screwy. And so we're trying to fix our main data center production. And luckily, other than some incorrect commands that we're running, we get it fixed. And then within the next hour, we flip back over and things are calm. And that was the most challenging and tense moment in this whole platform journey compared to everything. And it was all during work hours. It was all doing communication with our stakeholders in the business that we're used to when there's production outages. In this case, it was really just production slowdown. Obviously, there were some things that couldn't communicate for that time. And so that's really the value that I've seen in this platform that we've built on Kubernetes, is just the stability, the resiliency, having a small team of people that understand how it all works and can act on an issue very quickly. You have all the observability around what's working and what's not working. And so luckily that really stressful moment was so short and so minor compared to previous outages I've been in that it feels like a dream. So I hope that you enjoyed the story. And I see there's a lot more questions in the chat I'd love to get to in just a second. But I hope that was interesting and valuable to you, and that you got some good takeaways from what I shared. I'm just going to share my contact links here, and then I'm going to go through some of the questions, Christoph, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Alan, for sharing your experience. I think it's really cool. Yeah, let's go through these questions. Maybe let me read them out, because otherwise it's always hard to see this in the recording later. So Andrew is asking, how do you manage service registration? Is there a self-service portal, which authorization chain to create and dispose of services when they are no longer needed?
That's a really great question, Andrew. Right now, the portal is what controls. We have a database, a Mongo database that has like the metadata. And so far, that's kind of what we're using. We have a consistency of how we name things, but that's been a constant challenge. We're trying to work on some reconciliation loops to automatically clear things up in different systems. So we haven't nailed that experience yet. I think there's a lot more work to do. We're also working with Ambassador soon to use that as an API gateway to make it easier to maintain and monitor where things are at. Especially we have Linkerd as a service mesh, so that helps too.
Yeah, cool. So Wolfgang is asking, could you show the screens developers have to go through? Do you offer a CLI? What do you think of GitOps? That's a lot of questions in one.
Yeah, I can cover those pretty quickly. I think GitOps is great. I think it depends on your audience. There's going to be some business problems that are better solved as GitOps than what we're doing. And I wish we were doing deploys differently. We deploy with Helm, so it's still kind of imperative, like I'm sending the code there. But I think there's a lot of great tools in the future that we might move to make it more GitOps. I think there's value. It's like decide on your business problem, whether that's based on the people you have and what they're willing to maintain. That might be a better fit long-term. But in our case, it hasn't been a big enough problem for us to change. We don't offer CLI yet. We have a wrapper to make Octeto a little bit easier to work with, but so far we haven't had a real good reason to offer CLI, and I can't show screens, unfortunately.
Okay, understood. So maybe jumping to the Q&A before going to the other questions in the chat. So Jeff is asking, do you have non-prod environments for your platform? If so, do you test new features and fixes in these environments first?
Yeah, so what we implemented is via feature branches, we'll deploy to their own isolated namespace. So it's usually just the name of the project dash and then the feature branch name. And then that's where the developers can use Octeto to bring up their little isolated environment. So far, it's been working really great.
Cool. Then we have Sam asking, if I hired on a new dev to your team, what does day one look like?
So the developers that are building the platform for that, it would be like, working on a new feature request and just getting exposed to all the different subsystems. Maybe I would actually have them go through the training, which is, it's pretty basic. You make like a to-do app essentially. So it has a kind of a front-end portal, but also some back-end APIs you have to stitch up, and then you work with the databases. There's parts of the platform, we're calling it white glove, but it's not all white glove with development. You have a lot of leverage in some places, but if you make the experience like really great, but it's like something you can add 2 lines in a config someplace, we just have them do that for now. So it's not completely great. For developers using the platform, their experience as a new engineer with the platform is very similar. They go through the training, they can make it the app, and then they're also getting to know their teams and that sort of thing. So for us, we're kind of a traditional enterprise corporation. Training is really key. Work-life balance is really key. Those sorts of things. So it's really more about getting used to the culture, the community, and all that kind of stuff.
Cool. Thanks. Julian is asking, can you share in which language your IDP is developed in?
Yeah, so we have a mix of languages that we're using. For the most part, many of our developers are most familiar with .NET, C#, but we have some of our more platform engineer types using Golang for some backend services that are really like basic and simple. And then we also have JavaScript for the front end portal. It's just Angular. A lot of this, it's just simply the tools people are used to. We're pretty adamant that they stick with the shared ones, so that the onboarding and training is really limited.
Okay, understood. Jumping back to the chat, Sam is asking, where are all the multiple credentials stored, managed from the view of an individual developer?
So every project we stand up with its own like Vault repository. So I can go back here, but when you create your app in the portal, it's going to Vault and it's creating a bundle of secrets that we have a template that has all the architectural, kind of mandates and, decision records that we've decided on what an app needs to look like. So we use code generation to create that app. It has all the setup defined. And so when you are, starting your app, everything's already there. The secrets, we have some default secrets that are already provisioned for you. So as a developer, you just go into Vault and you just update your secret that you need. And that's kind of it. It's pretty basic.
Cool. Understood. Robert is asking, did you measure the improvement in developer experience?
That is a tough one because we don't have really good metrics on Azure DevOps and how it takes a team to go from like ideation to the end. We just know that it's like too slow. But for the new experience, we do have some metrics. So it's 17 days from ideation to the first production release. Obviously, there's a lot of development that happens after that because like what I understand production to mean is not what the business is going to use in production. So it's kind of hand wavy. But for the most part, it's much faster. Usually the problem isn't the speed to get it to production. It's really just like understanding your business problem and like API development. And that's something that we're really trying to fix with the next version of the platform.
Cool. Switching back to the chat. So Andrew has one more question. How did you refer to the new platform? Did you come up with a name to sell it, the project, to other teams?
Yeah, it's called dev.lab.
It's what you're wearing.
Yeah, they got hats. Everybody got hats. That's what makes the difference. Hats.
Cool. Hats make the difference. Great. I think, Alan, I managed to go through all the questions, if I'm not mistaken. So, but as I said, we'll share the recording tomorrow. We'll share your presentation. We'll share your contact details that are also on the last slide. If anybody wants to start a discussion, I think happy to reach out to either you or me. We're always up for discussions about platforms. For now, thank you very much, Alan. Thanks for sharing your experience with us on this journey, and especially talking about the challenges when building an internal platform. I think that's something to keep in mind, and probably something good for people to hear that are just starting this journey. So thanks a lot. Have a great day or evening or afternoon from wherever you joined. And I hope to see many of you in one of our next meetups. Take care.